Star Wars 7 by 7 episode 3095. This episode is going to play out a little bit differently because I'm in the middle of a power outage here in central New Hampshire. Yeah, we've had storms and the power was out actually last week, but we managed to record around it. This time, though, doesn't seem like that's the case. I've waited for as long as I can for the power to come back, but the show must go on. So we're going to try it this way and see what happens. This episode, we're going to be talking about Christmas in the Stars. You may be familiar with it. If you're not, then oh boy, you're in for a treat. And I say that reservedly because it's either great or it's ironically fun to listen to, or it's just ear-splittingly awful, depending on who you talk to. It came out 42 years ago. Actually, shockingly, it came out 2 years almost to the day from when the Star Wars Holiday Special came out. It debuted in November of 1980. It was the brainchild of Miko Monardo, the Disco King, who had done the album Star Wars and Other Galactic Funk. And according to Wikipedia, Miko wrote a 9-page letter to George Lucas asking for permission to not only make a Christmas album, but to make it an annual thing. And it sold pretty well, apparently. It got to something like, I think, 150,000 copies sold, and they were getting ready for a second print run, but then the studio actually shut down due to a lawsuit, a whole separate lawsuit. Had nothing to do with Christmas in the Stars, but just one of those weird things where it then just kind of disappeared. But it actually got onto the charts. It debuted, I think, or got as high as number 61 on the pop charts for the album charts, and the hit song off of that was, of course, What Can You Get a Wookiee for Christmas When He Already Owns a Comb. That one also charted. The album actually has kind of a pretty decent pedigree for all intents and purposes. It includes music and lyrics by Maury Yeston, who went on to be a Tony Award winner for musicals on Broadway, Drama Desk Awards, legit stuff. He was a Yale University music professor at the time. But probably the most famous name to come out of this album is none other than John Bon Jovi, yes, of Bon Jovi fame. He appeared in R2-D2 We Wish You a Merry Christmas. He's singing the main lead on that song, and he actually wrote another one of the songs on the album as well. But he is the cousin of the guy who was the co-producer of the album and was called in as a favor to kind of participate in the whole thing, and it became essentially his first professional music credit. But mostly the album is performed by two people, Anthony Daniels and Ben Burtt. So Ben does the work for R2-D2 and Chewbacca in the album, and Anthony Daniels, it doesn't exactly sing necessarily. It's kind of like a dialogue-driven type of singing, if you will. Like there's a rhythm to it, certainly, but it's kind of like, the difference between walking and jogging and running, basically. And these days, I think you'd have to check out eBay to try to pick up a copy of it if you wanted to listen to it or to find it on YouTube. In fact, I will link to a YouTube recording of it so you can check it out for yourself. It's not on Spotify. And I may even have the album kicking around somewhere, like the actual vinyl of it, but I do know I have a CD of it as well. If you got a half hour today, because that's all it is, it's like 30 some odd minutes. It's pretty quick. And you want to put something fun on while you're in the middle of doing something else, wrapping presents or something like that, well, then may I recommend Christmas in the Stars for you. It's pretty trippy, to say the least. And so, again, I will have a link to where you can listen via YouTube at the blog post for this show's episode at sw7x7.com. And in the show notes for this episode, I think that show notes and all that stuff might be a little slow in coming based on the power outage situation. But we'll do the best we can. But I wanted to at least get the episode out for you so we could continue having our conversations here. And that is going to do it for this episode of the podcast. So it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for it, as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.